Hello everyone and welcome back. So with this tournament going on, I've gotten a lot of new subscribers, a lot of new viewers, and a lot of comments on older videos that have been up for a couple months now. And it's sort of gotten me thinking more about basic concepts because of a lot of new players, just new players in general to the game that just got the game recently and are discovering my videos. And they're the same place we all were back in whenever we started. So they're asking a lot of basic things, so I've been thinking a lot about basic sort of things. So I made a video a few months ago called What is Strategy? And this is sort of a follow-up video to that, sort of a part 2, because there's one very important concept that I don't think I really talked about in the first one, but I really want to talk about now as I've really been thinking about it a lot recently. And that big question is, what is the best army? What is the best setup? People always use the word best. And best is not the word that you want to use. Now, barring glaring imbalances like the 32 attack lone swords that we used to see back in the day, there is no best unit. There is no best army. There are only right armies, and there are dozens and dozens of right armies. There's Naginata corps, there's Nodachi corps, there's Katana corps, Missile corps, Cavalry corps, Ninja corps. Almost anything can be a corps. Heck, we've seen Yari corps. I didn't think that was possible, but we saw one in this tournament, and it ended up working. So when you think about your core, you have to think, what's my core? You just decide that right away. You think, okay, I like Nodachi, so I'm going to build an army around him. That should be the number one decision when you're making an army, is what do I think is the coolest, or what do I like using the most? That should definitely be your first consideration, and not what is the best, because what is best will change with every patch as imbalances get fixed. And there's sort of an analogy that I really like when I'm talking about best versus right. And that's, if you haven't seen it, it's a great movie. There's a movie called Miracle, and it's about the 1980 U.S. hockey team. And in the very beginning of the movie, they're having this big tryout with hundreds of hockey players, throughout America, trying to find the team. And it's like a 3-day event where they're going to rate all the players and decide which ones they take. But at the end of the first day, the main character, the coach, Herb Brooks, already has his list ready and presents it to the board. And the board looks at it, and they're like, what's this? You left off most of the best players. And the coach says, I'm not looking for the best players. I'm looking for the right ones. And that's huge. That's so important to understand. You have to have the right army, not the best army. There are so many examples of this throughout my videos that I've posted, and others, of course. But there's one example that stands out in my mind, and it's one of the battles I had very early on. It's one of my first videos that I ever put up, and one of the first ones with commentary, like the first one or the second one even, way back in March. And it was a battle that I called Choke Points in You. And it was a very important concept of judging what your army can do and how you need to look at, even just where you're positioning the army is so important depending on your composition. Now in that battle, it was the very early stages of my Katana Corps. It was the first Proto-Katana Corps build with 6 Katana Samurai, 2 Yaris, which ended up being pretty much unchanged throughout time, but then 2 Yari Cavalry, 2 bows, and a matchlock. The enemy had a big spear wall sort of thing going on with like 1 or 2 notices. I don't remember exactly. He had a big cavalry component, like 5 cavalry units. It was definitely what you would probably call a cavalry corps. And it was on the map Shinano River, which you've seen in this tournament. It's the one where there's the river going through the middle, and there's a choke point on each side of the river. And so what he did was he put his Yaris on that choke point and just kind of like sat there and waited for me to come to him. Now normally when you're looking at a map where you want to defend on, you think, oh, choke point, that's a great defensive position. On especially a flat map like that, you think that's the best defensive position. It totally makes sense. You look at that movie 300, how did the Spartans win? Because they were geniuses and they put themselves in that choke point, and they ended up just slaughtering thousands of Persians. I guess technically they didn't win, but they pretty much sort of did. And what you have to look at that in a situation and think, wait a minute, yeah, maybe that's the best defensive position, but am I a Greek or am I a Persian? Because you don't want to be a Persian in that situation. That's what he ended up being, because my Katana Samurai just rolled right through that Yari line, no problem. And since he was in that little choke point, he couldn't get his cavalry around to flank me. So what was the best defensive position ended up being the worst spot on the map for him. It would have been so much better for him if he would just been out on the open field and just let me come to him across an open field where his cavalry had plenty to maneuver. He had 5 cavalry units, I think, in that battle, and I had 2. I mean, he could have just dedicated 1 cavalry unit to take out each one of mine, and then still have 3 left over to just destroy my Katana Samurai. So it's really important. We saw that just because it's a recent example, the battle of in Papercut Assassin versus Ta in round 2, where he had a really great idea with the Nodachi ambush. I really liked it, and I wish it had worked. But Ta was able to easily stop it because there wasn't the right support for that build. He was basing that whole army off of a successful Nodachi ambush. But how he supported it was with a front line of Yari, Ashigaru, and Spear Wall. And when we talk about ambushes, it's all about timing. And Yari, Ashigaru, and Spear Wall, unfortunately, are pretty much the hardest things to get a timing right with because they're so slow and they just plain get fatigued and won't fight as well after the battle starts, giving you less time of them standing and fighting to get an ambush off. So your window of timing is so small with that front line of Yari Spear Wall that it's so hard to do an ambush, especially when the ambush is coming on foot and not on horse. So something, I mean, if he had a wall of Naginatas being his infantry support, which actually would have been really interesting. It would have been really cool to see a Naginata and Nodachi corps. We have like the sword corps with the 2 Nodachis and the 4 Katana Samurai. I mean, 2 Nodachis and 4 Naginatas would be really cool too, because they're just tanks and they can stand a fight for so long, much longer than Katana Samurai can, because they have much better defense and armor. So when you're talking about supporting an ambush on foot, I think Naginatas would actually be a little better than Katana Samurai for holding the ground and buying as much time as you can to get that perfect charge off from your Nodachis. That'd be really cool. You don't see enough Naginata Samurai these days. I really wish they would come back and just be a staple like those old school Naginata corps. That's actually what we saw in that same battle. I think Ta had that old school Naginata corps going on. I was just so excited to see it because it used to be really popular. Now you usually see just Naginatas being like 1 or 2 in support, not being the old style corps they used to be. So that is a huge part of strategy when you're building your army and when you're playing, is not what the best setup or the best army is or the best units are, but what are the right ones. What is going to be the perfect support to help your corps out and give them the leverage they need to win that battle. Like my Katana Samurai, I'd always like throw my cavalry away early in these early attacks. Seems kind of silly, right? Like cavalry are used for hammer and anvil action. But it actually works very well with katanas because Katana Samurai, being the sort of kings of the infantry battle, don't need that cavalry charge necessarily to win it. So if you use your cavalry to take out the support for his infantry, your katanas will walk in and clean him up no problem. So I was so much more open to early cavalry action because my army was built for it and could withstand the infantry battle even if the cavalry got cleaned up. So that's just sort of what I've been thinking about recently, and I kind of wanted to get that out there. So people can sort of think about that when they're building their armies. And I know there are a lot of new players with Fall of the Samurai coming out. Very important to specialize your army if you're going against Fall of the Samurai armies. It's a big challenge to do. There's a reason why the Imperial Army kind of wiped the floor with the Shogunate back in the Meiji Restoration. So you got to really think about these sort of things. And it's a very important thing to do if you're going to be a good player. So thanks for watching, everybody. I'll see you in the next tournament match.